Well, after year upon year of SUV growth, are we finally seeing a resurgence to the humble, or perhaps not so humble sedan? The quest for new energy solutions and improved overall efficiency has seen the form factor of cars change back to a sedan-style shape. The Tesla Model 3, the Porsche Taycan, the Polestar 2, and now the Hyundai Ioniq 6, all doing their best to bring sexy back to sedans. The Ioniq 6 is the latest all-electric vehicle to utilise Hyundai Group's eGMP platform. This gives it the same 77.4 kilowatt-hour battery as the Hyundai Ioniq 5, Genesis GV60 and Kia EV6, along with the 350 kilowatt capable charging architecture and vehicle-to-load capability. For charging, you can juice up the battery from 10 to 80% power in just 18 minutes on a rapid charger. There are 3 models in the Ioniq 6 range: the 168 kilowatt 350 Nm rear drive dynamic, a 239 kilowatt 605 Nm twin motor all-wheel drive Technic, and the range-topping Epic, which adds a heat pump, battery conditioner and digital wing mirrors to the Technic's driveline. Cars are available in 8 exterior and 4 interior colours. The one we have here is the twin motor Epic in the signature Gravity Gold matte paint. Style-wise, there are some fun elements like the parametric pixel taillights and transparent fin antenna. There are some tech elements like the adaptive matrix LED headlamps and motorised air cooling flaps on the front. Plus, there are some efficiency elements like the flush door handles and a new flat H logo designed to make the car every percentage more efficient as possible. Pricing starts from $74,000 before on-road costs for the single motor dynamic. Stepping to the Technic adds the dual motor driveline, 20-inch wheels, sunroof and ventilated reclining front seats for $83,500, while the Epic will set you back $88,000 before on-road costs. Size-wise, the Ioniq 6 is a medium sedan and it's closer in size to a Sonata than it is to an i30. There's not much in it though, less than 5 centimetres in overall length. The design is very modern, but perhaps a bit polarising. In the right spec, like our car, it looks good and funky and conversationally different. But get it wrong, like say a dynamic on the smaller aero design wheels in the bright Smurfy blue, and you may not win too many favourable glances this side of Gargamel's castle. Either way, efficiency is at the core of the Ioniq 6, with much of the design specifically focused on squeezing every ounce of economy from that low-mount battery pack. So, as a medium-sized executive sedan, or dare I say even sports sedan, the Ioniq 6 cuts a pretty impressive profile. It cuts a pretty slippery profile too. It has a drag coefficient of 0.217, which makes it the most aerodynamic Hyundai to date. Now, as you can see from the profile, which I think is probably the best way to take in this car, that long, almost 3-metre wheelbase basically does put the wheel at each corner mindset that we've had for electric cars as we've seen them develop over the years. The swoopy turret, again, will show you the inside, does kind of limit rear passenger headroom, but again, as Hyundai have said, if you want more rear room, buy an Ioniq 5. But it's the back that actually makes this car, I guess, even more interesting. You've got this double-stacked spoiler array here that, when you're following it, is kind of reminiscent of a 1980s Porsche Turbo with the whale tail or T-tray up the back and even the light-up heck blend below. Not bad. Now, while we are here, it is fair to call out some of the practicalities of the Ioniq 6 because, as you can see, it is a sedan rather than a liftback that we've seen so many cars that cut this similar kind of profile use that whole rear glass to open up a very, very practical rear end of the car. Not so here. You've got a reasonable boot aperture here. It's not a bad size and you do have the ability to fold the seats, but you are constrained to a sedan. If you want more space, buy the Ioniq 5. That boot isn't huge, 401 litres compared to 474 litres on the i30 sedan, but the seats flip 60-40 and you also score a 45-litre storage compartment in the nose of rear drive models. The bad news is that drops to under 15 litres for all-wheel drive cars due to the placement of the second motor. Okay, so up front in the Ioniq 6, and again, the ground-up electric platform translates to, I guess, and this is the way we see it so often used, really clever interior space. You don't have to adjust for transmission tunnels. You don't have to try and fit in with what was already there. The designers can basically take the empty space of inside the car and figure out what's going to work the best. So here you've got a 2-stage center console here. You've got cup holders and wireless charging on top. and I'll get to these in a tick. They're the window switches, but below there's another deck full of storage. There's a center console bin here. There's USB ports all around, both A and C, which is great for charging phones, using Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, or dealing with other devices. You've got a slide-out glove box. You've got door pockets, but perhaps the most interesting thing is part of the engineering to the interior of the Ioniq 6, the door cards have actually been reduced in their width because the window controls have been moved from there to here on the center console, as I said. Now, that may only be a few millimeters here and there to basically make that door card smaller, but all of that contributes to this new way of thinking about how we design interiors of cars to promote the maximum amount of room, and I guess the different appeal of the different models. Hyundai themselves say that the Ioniq 5 is designed for a lounge experience. The Ioniq 6 is designed for a more cozy and cosseting experience. You've got two-stage ambient lighting that you can configure. You've got all sorts of bits and pieces that you can make this car feel like yours. Plus, it's actually got another, well, interesting feature, but perhaps I'm not really sure of the use of it yet. In the center of the steering wheel here, you have 4 lights. Now, if you've used a Google Home Pod or one of those kind of things, it's very, very similar. They react to actions of the car. If you have the car in reverse, they light up red. If you have the car in drive, they light up blue. If there's something happening, they'll let you know. If you use the voice activation, they light up to signify the car is listening, all that kind of stuff. And while, yes, I don't really know if we needed this, I certainly didn't ask for it myself, it is another way that technology is trying to be incorporated into cars to make them feel more like, I guess, what you're using around the home. Now, other things to call out in this is the Epic. So this is the range-topping car, and you can probably see this has the video mirrors. Now, we saw these first on the Audi e-tron, then on the Genesis GV60. You've got these 2 OLED screens either side of the dashboard here. They're nicely integrated. The pods themselves are very modern, very cool looking. But, okay, and hear me out on this, mirrors work as mirrors, right? You move your head up and down and the vision on the mirror changes based on your the frame of reference. These are screens, they're using cameras in the doors. I can move around, but that image doesn't change, and it makes parking really, really difficult. Now, thankfully, they are only available on this top spec Epic, which is the all-wheel drive. It has a heat pump and a battery preconditioner as well. If you don't like those mirrors, you can go to the mid-range car and get pretty much everything you need, which would be my suggestion, because personally, I don't like them. I don't think we needed them. But if you're in the market for one of these, go and take it for a test drive. Test drive a car with regular mirrors, test drive a car with video mirrors, see where you feel about this. Are you willing to embrace that whole new level of technology? Or are you like me and are pretty happy with the way that mirrors work to begin with? Now, up front, we've got 2 12.3-inch screens. If you've driven any recent Hyundai, not just the electric ones, the software and the information that's provided on these will be very, very familiar. They're well-featured systems. They do take a little bit of getting used to with all of the settings through the sub-menus, but once you're there, it's actually okay. And again, one of the criticisms that we have had over Kia and Hyundai models, which share the same operating system here, is when you turn on the car, all of the driver assist beeps and blops are active, and this car will find a way to beep and blop at you regardless of what you're doing. You're looking at a speed sign wrong. You may be kind of brushing a line here and there. There'll be a beep, there'll be a buzz. You can turn these things off, but every time you restart the car, they turn back on. Like I said on a clip with the Kia Sportage, the one time you turn them off and need them is the one time you really wish you hadn't turned them off. You'll probably learn to live with them. But certainly for a day behind the wheel here, I've found some of them quite kind of warranted to turn off pretty early on in the piece, mainly so you didn't have to hear it going beep and bluff every time I talk on camera. But it is something that we find with this system that could perhaps deal with a software update. And speaking of that, the Ioniq 6 comes with the Hyundai BlueLink software, which means the car can receive over-the-air updates. So whether that's software tuning or battery tuning or new navigation data, the car is capable of updating itself like we see in many other cars these days. So a big step forward in many ways, not just in the electric architecture. Worthy of note is that the driving position is still quite high for taller occupants, which means you may find your head brushing against the roof lining, or more crucially, your knees bumping the transmission shifter on the right-hand side of the steering wheel. It's not critical, and there are ways to adjust yourself for a comfortable position, but it's yet another reason to go and have a look at an Ioniq 6 before you order one online, especially if you're tall. Okie dokes. So the back seats of a swoopy aerodynamic sedan are basically never going to be a roomy place for someone over 6 foot. And look, you've got good and bad back here, so let's just go through it in all of its ways. I am 6'3", right? So I am going to be in the taller part of people who will ever sit in the back. And personally speaking, I never sit in the back, I sit in the front, so it's not really about me. However, if you are dealing with tall passengers, things to note, you've got tremendously good legroom. Big tick. That 3-metre long wheelbase really does allow a really, really solid amount of legroom here. You can see I've got miles between my knees and the back of the seat, which means for shorter people back here, they're basically swimming in room. And of course, when you're charging the car, you can put the front seats into their super relaxation lounge room mode, so there is a bit of room back here. So big tick on that one. However, the battery pack under the floor, as we've seen in other electric models, raises that floor of the car. So my feet sit higher to where the bench is. And as you can see, my thighs are barely even touching this seat because it's sort of sitting quite upright there. So for me, an Ioniq 5, which has a higher seat base and a deeper gap there, is probably the more practical one if I was sitting in the back. The other thing is, the swoopy headlining does kind of cut into where I am. I'm sort of sitting a bit scooched. I'm not overly comfortable, but I'm not uncomfortable. The seat itself is really well supported. You've got an armrest with cup holders back here. There are USB ports. You can even move that front passenger seat forward if you want to have a little bit of extra legroom here and you're sitting in that spot. There are ISOFIX points there. So there's a lot of good things back here, providing you're not me. So if you're not carting around a late 40s, probably had too much for lunch, 6'3" kind of person, then you're going to be okay. If you've got kids, if you've got maybe grandparents, older people in the back, there is a lot of really good space here. And again, like we always say, go and try it out. If you're thinking about buying one of these and you're not quite sure, take the people or the baby seat or the things that you're going to be putting in the back to your Hyundai dealer, sit in it, see what you think, and let us know in the comments below. But for me, yeah, it's a bit tight back here, but it is a swoopy sedan, so that's kind of to be expected. So here we are, 2023, and another new electric vehicle. And what we're seeing is, I guess, the resurgence of the sedan, the swoopy aerodynamic shape of the Ioniq 6, similar to where the Tesla 3, the Porsche Taycan are basically trying to squeeze every last drop of efficiency from their battery systems as we start to evolve this whole electric driving segment. Because I can tell you now, every new one presents new things and new approaches and even better refinements. And the Ioniq 6 is certainly no exception. Now, first, some basics. You've got 3 drive modes. There's an eco mode, a normal mode, and a sport mode. In the eco mode, it's actually got a really clever throttle response mechanism where it will accelerate, even if you are sort of relatively forceful with your acceleration. It will accelerate similar to a petrol car. You get a really gradual wind on of power that doesn't give you that sort of shocking or jerky acceleration that you're used to in an electric car. So it really does use the technology in a way that tries to map the performance of the car to the settings that you have. Now, we're going to leave it in normal for the predominant duration of this drive, because it's actually a really great way to understand where the benefits of this car really lie. As a swoopy sedan, you've got obviously the restricted headroom in the back, but it is lower than the Ioniq 5. You've got the battery pack in the middle. The eGMP platform, as we've discussed a number of times here at Drive, is one of the best in the world in terms of providing all of the elements that EV buyers want to have. You've got good battery size, you've got great battery range, you've got high-speed charging, you've got vehicle to load. It really is a fully featured electric platform that, when applied to a sports sedan like this one, actually starts to really work, because that low center of gravity gives the car pretty impressive road holding. You've got what is basically sports sedan dynamics in a touring sedan, and I think that's the right way to look at this car. It is not an all-out sportster. It is not an N product, although at some point there may be an Ioniq 6N. Consider it as the way that we used to look for BMW 3 Series and Mercedes-Benz C-Class in many ways, and even some of the Audi A4s, as a sports sedan. And it's there that the Ioniq 6 really begins to make sense.
So, as our sports sedan, let's cover off the main thing, performance. Yeah, it's quick. It's not that kind of melt your face, crush your lunch type of acceleration. It's got really nice performance. It winds on well, but even as a passenger, it's not, I guess, so forceful in a way that makes you feel uneasy. The sports mode, again, it gives you a little bit of extra oomph. It certainly isn't a slow car, and for country touring, it can easily handle your 80 to 100k an hour overtake if you needed to. But it's where this sort of works, I guess, in linear progression as driving, that it actually starts to really begin to work with the car's platform. And I know I've sort of said this a few times, and it's very hard to explain, but this is like driving a normal car. And I know that sounds really weird, and you think, well, it's an electric car, but is it? It really does bring you back to the same sort of dynamic feeling that you're used to out of a sporting sedan. And it's that level that makes this perhaps the most interesting of the Hyundai products. So the ride quality is very good. You find even over some modelled surfaces here on country Victorian and New South Wales roads, you can dispatch potholes and sort of changing areas of the surface okay. The high-speed compression on suspension is actually really good. But the car behaves very predictably. You're not finding it bouncing around, you're not finding it wallowing, and as we have found in some electrics, you've got a lot of weight to move around, and you can feel that in a number of cars. If you're in a high-speed corner, you can really feel the amount of mass that the car has. Not so much in the Ioniq 6, because it is so low to the ground, it actually feels like a regular car. And even here, going around this bend, we're on a 100 kilometre an hour posted road. The advisory sign for this corner says 60. We're going around it at 90, and the car is as flat as you need it to be. It is very, very confident and very much at home on touring roads. And for Australian buyers, look, we know this car is going to spend most of its time around the city, but if you do want to go for a touring drive, I don't want to use this word loosely, it's fun.
Hyundai have thrown the acronym alphabet at the Ioniq 6, with all models receiving the full spread of Hyundai's SmartSense assistance technologies. What's more, the forward collision avoidance function has been updated to offer both brake and swervability should an oncoming car cross the centre lane and risk a head-on collision. The Ioniq 6 also launches with a 5-star ANCAP safety rating.
So popping the car into sport mode, and you get a little bit of extra oomph on here, and again, these are 100k posted touring roads, and the car flows really nicely. The steering feel is weighted in such a way that it feels very natural and organic. You do have electrically assisted steering here, and actually you'll find you'll go through a series of flowing S's and feel like you've rediscovered an old BMW for that level of directness. And then when the car straightens up, you can feel the electric assistance pull you back into the center of the lane. And it basically shows that the engaging steering feel of this car is in many essence a simulation. It has been programmed in to feel that way and to actually perform that way. It's been designed to do that rather than being a natural and organic and mechanical connection between you and the road. And while that is a statement of where we're going in the future and what this means to, I guess, the future of driving, it's done in such a way that you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. If you want to relax and you want to have the car feel softer and lighter and perhaps more in control with lane guidance and all that sort of stuff, it will do that. But if you want to take control of the car and you want to actually feel that you're driving it, you can do that too. And I think in that respect, it makes the Ioniq 6 a driver's EV, particularly as a sports sedan.
All this talk of efficiency underscores Hyundai's claim of a market-leading 14.3 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometres WLTP economy. That's not bad for a car that tips the scales at 1,970 kilos. That means the rear drive dynamic, which is what's been used to measure the efficiency claim, has a range of up to 614 kilometres, more than enough to travel from Sydney to Canberra and back again on one electrode tank. Well, once again, Hyundai's ground-up approach to electrification has delivered a pretty impressive car. Now sure, it may not be as roomy or as practical as the Ioniq 5, But in terms of its swoopy aerodynamic styling and, well, kind of out there styling, the Ioniq 6 carves its own little niche. You've got what is the makings of a very solid electric platform in the big battery, the long range, the efficient performance, the high-speed charging, and even things like vehicle to load, answering all the questions that current or even future EV buyers are looking for. But the way the car handles and behaves like a real car, and I know that sounds silly to say, it makes this a bona fide executive solution just as well as it is a bona fide electric solution. Is it a true sports sedan? Well, it's not bad, but all I can say is Hyundai, bring on the Ioniq 6N. Now, if you've liked this clip and want to know more about the Hyundai Ioniq 6 or Ioniq 5 or any other electric cars on the market, like, subscribe, follow, you know what to do, and head on over to Drive.com.au for all the information you could possibly need. So until next time, I'm going to take this all the way back to Melbourne to see what it's like on a really long efficiency tour. If you want to know the results, stay tuned for that.